Okay. Hi, Stephen Odille Remmert, founders of the Remmert Method. We're coming again to you today live with another topic. Today's topic is going to be on guilt. And Odile, I think I'd like to start first by asking the question, why? Why guilt? Why now?
You don't know? Do you feel guilty about that? Well,
Absolutely.
so yesterday morning, Steve and I were chatting, and the topic of guilt came up because we've had, it's been a sort of theme in a few recent client sessions, and we came across a realization that we thought. I mean, it was certainly a light bulb moment for me, and we thought this would be a good thing to share with everyone. So, where do I start? So, guilt. Okay, first of all, guilt is obviously something that a lot of people struggle with, and that kind of thing. And we're going to give you our what we sort of thought about for guilt, the new insights on it, and then we're going to go through how you can free yourself from it, why you should free your, or why what the benefits are for freeing yourself from it, and how to do that. And there are two stages to that
Mhm.
process. The first stage will be addressing the logic. So the speaking to the conscious mind and addressing any resistance or objections to letting go of guilt. And then the second stage is in two parts. The first part will be using unconditional love for releasing guilt. And then the second part of that will be finding the original childhood references that are creating the pattern or that make guilt difficult to let go of. And the goal that we want to end up with is replacing guilt. So you're not just going to get rid of guilt, it's replacing guilt with unconditional love instead for yourself and for anyone else involved and the situation and so on. So, first of all, let's look at why guilt, because, or, why do we want to get rid of it? Because there can be a tendency to feel, well, I should feel guilty if I've done something wrong. So a lot of people feel guilt even when they didn't do anything wrong. But certainly we feel like, if I don't feel guilty, it means I don't care. So there are those kinds of objections. And the first point I want to make is that guilt is not helpful. It doesn't change anything. So it doesn't make the thing okay. It doesn't make up for it. It doesn't um, correct anything or undo anything. It literally just damages you inside you. And if anything else, it prevents you from moving forward, from doing other things. So guilt can be a massive, we were talking earlier about toxic guilt. It can be hugely, uh, you know, keep you stuck, keep you from achieving things that you want to achieve, keep you from making the most of relationships and stuff like that. And I know, did you want to get a word in first before I launch into the kind of insight piece that I wanted to share?
No, I appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah, I think as we're getting started out here, I know that the kind of the thought that I have, especially for somebody that might be tuning in to us for the first time, or the topic of guilt, it is knowing that I spent a lifetime dealing with guilt and feeling like I've tried any number of different things to try to let go, of guilt. And the frustration around hearing people say, well, you just need to let that go.
Yes.
It's like, well, guilt isn't helpful. It's like, yes, I know that. Someplace inside of me, I know that, right?
Right.
But I can't let this go. And it
Mhm.
feels like one of those, for me, it felt like one of those forces that just had a stranglehold, and I couldn't get rid of that. And tried,
Absolutely.
you name it, I likely tried, using that to get rid of that guilt feeling.
Yeah.
And, perhaps we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I feel like guilt may be one of those feelings for me that was, I don't, I'm not sure I can go back to a time when I didn't feel some sense of
Mhm.
guilt. So
Yeah.
it's a long held feeling.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I remember you saying as well that you weren't sure that it could be changed, actually, because of that, because it was so ingrained.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you for that, because that's a really good point as well, is that just let go of it is not helpful at all. Um, Making that decision to let go of it is an important first step, but we're going to share with you exactly how you can go about letting go of it. So,
And
in an
can I
effective
step
way.
in just can I step in
Yeah,
real quickly?
of
And
course.
in doing that, I know you kind of mentioned that, but I think that people that again may be new to our methodology, the way that we work, the way that you like to work, addressing more of the logical reasons and that
Yes.
kind of thing before we get to any unconscious or subconscious type of reasoning for the guilt and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact that you're actually meth- there's a method to your your
To my
madness.
madness, were you going to say? All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, the piece that I really wanted to, this was one of those things that kind of hit me
Mm,
yesterday, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is such a powerful way
mhm,
of looking at it. I realized, because we've had guilt and then changed childhood memories to get rid of various patterns and things. But what I realized is that if you a way of telling if you have underlying um, guilt that is holding you back is notice how you feel or things you say when it's not something that's reasonable. So, for example, I used to apologize basically just for being there. Somewhere, just go, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I was constantly saying sorry. I was constantly feeling in the way or an inconvenience and that kind of thing. And that's an extreme um, example, but there are varying degrees to it. And so noticing when apologies and excusing yourself, that kind of thing, goes beyond basic manners. So there are manners and there's being polite, and that's all very nice, and you apologize to be polite. But when it goes deeper than that, when it's feeling, when it's affecting you in ways where perhaps you're feeling self-conscious, you're feeling uncomfortable, those kinds of things, those are the red flags. So here's the insight that I realized yesterday morning. Guilt, I think, is like a debt that can never be paid.
mm,
Meaning
mm, mm,
that when we feel guilty, it's a feeling of we need to make up for it in some way. And I've just got goosebumps as I'm saying that. We need to make up for it in some way, and we never will be able to. And
mm,
so we then spend our lives feeling that it's like you broke someone's window and you want to pay to have it fixed, but you keep paying. And it feels like it'll never be enough. And you will die before you've ever had a chance to pay it back or pay or make up for it. And I believe that this is really powerful because I suspect that unconsciously we are creating that um, debt in our lives, manifesting in different ways. So for some people, it may be physical symptoms, pain, fatigue, other physical symptoms,
yeah.
where because guilt needs punishment. So, if I'm guilty of something, I feel like I should be punished. And as I know you pointed this out this morning as well when we were talking about this, is that it's
Mhm.
unconscious. So it doesn't necessarily make sense. So you're not thinking to yourself, I need to punish myself. It's an automatic from the unconscious part of the brain. So, and the way that can manifest is in our decisions and what we don't allow ourselves to receive or enjoy or experience. It can come in literal debt, money issues. So, constantly struggling with money could be a way the unconscious part of the brain is trying to make up for whatever we think we're guilty of. The never-ending debt that has to constantly be paid and will never be paid. So, physical symptoms, money, relationships, work issues, or various circumstances. There are all kinds of ways that I think the unconscious part of the brain finds to match um, punishment with the guilt. And that for me is the biggest reason for changing it and finding a way to let it go. And we're going to give you a way to let it go. Did you want to
Yeah,
did you want to get a word in?
yeah, yeah. So, a couple of thoughts, just y- um, that sense of guilt equals punishment.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, guilt
maybe you could
needs
say,
punishment.
yeah, guilt needs punishment. How do we know that? How do we know that? How do we learn that? How do we know that that's a truth?
Well, so first of all,
Hmm.
if you can experience it yourself, you can just think about it. So anyone who's felt guilty about something will probably have noticed, or if you take
Hmm.
another look at it, you'll probably recognize that feeling of I'm bad, I should be punished, even if you're not necessarily wanting to consciously invite punishment. I think an aspect of guilt is I deserve to be punished, or I'm worried that I will be punished, something like that. So
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it's just that. So so now let's look at, was anything else you wanted to say on that
Well, I
before I
guess
move on to?
I I just wanted to maybe throw in a little bit that this notion of guilt and punishment is likely that pattern that was instilled very early in our life.
Absolutely, yes,
That
absolutely. And
we as children, we don't come into the world with a preformed sense of this is right or this
absolutely,
is wrong. So
yeah,
that has to be taught early on in childhood. And I'm sure that we
absolutely.
all have, intrinsic, in other words, prior to conscious memory, intrinsic memory of how we learned that something was right or wrong, or how we learned to experience those feelings of guilt. I don't want to get too deep into that right
Yeah,
now, but I'm saying the point being that guilt is one of those learned experience, one of those learned
absolutely. Yeah,
things.
yeah. It is definitely. And I would say for those of us who guilt is a problem, for whom guilt is a problem, we're definitely conditioned that way, absolutely, in childhood. That's, of course, where we learn everything.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but everything about who we are and how the world works. Um, but I would also add that not everyone has that problem. So not
Hmm.
everyone has a problem with guilt.
Right.
Some people are the opposite and don't even notice. And for other people, and I think the healthiest way is to recognize, oh, I did something that was wrong. And
Hmm.
then this is where I want to go with the next piece of this.
Okay.
What we're aiming for is when you do something wrong, it's okay, it's normal and human to feel bad about it at first. You feel, oh my, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, or whatever the situation is. It's about the fact that you hold on to it. In other words, using that analogy of the debt, it's you want to aim for it's a debt that can be paid. And the way you pay it is like this. So let's say I broke a window. We'll use that. I broke someone's thing, whatever the thing is. The first thing, of course, is remorse or apology. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I did that or whatever. So you express that, You express that you care, and then is there something you can do to make up for it, or to pay it, or fix it, or whatever? So, is there something you can do to help the person or the situation? If there is, fantastic, do that, and the unconditional love will come into that as well. And I'll get to exactly how to use that. But once you have apologized and then done whatever it is you can to make it to help in some way, if there is anything, and you have got yourself into a state of unconditional love for that person, the thing, obviously starting with yourself, then you consider that debt paid. And then you move on. You move on with your life. Because otherwise, continuing to feel guilty isn't going to change anything, and isn't going to help, and it's going to hold you back. And I know yesterday one of the first things you brought up was, what if you kill someone? And that's, is a fair point. If you commit some crime. So let's say you've killed someone. Of course, you'll feel bad. Obviously, we're talking about normal people, so we're not talking about psychopaths and things. But let's say you've killed someone and you feel bad about it. Feeling guilty, continuing to feel guilty, is not going to bring the person back. It's not going to help their loved ones. It's not going to change anything or help anything. What can be done? So obviously you can't undo it. You can't bring the person back. There are 3 things that you can do. The first thing is, can you do anything for people who are still there? Can you do something for the family? Can you do something? So a lot of people, or there are certainly, I say a lot of people, I've heard of quite a few people who have committed some sort of crime like that, and then they've turned their life around, and they now go and speak in schools, or they volunteer for other potential perpetrators to try and help them turn around. So in other words, it's turning the guilt into something much more productive and helpful. So you can do that. So that's the first thing. Is that the second thing? That's the second thing. And then the third thing, of course, is the unconditional love. Did I cover everything in that? I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's,
and as you're going through this, I'm also aware that I want to encourage people to please, if you're listening, watching along, if you've got questions or comments that you'd like to be making, please put those down in the comment section. We got a lot of really great questions from our video last week. We love interacting with folks
yeah.
with the questions, and I know that we're throwing a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of stuff here that maybe we're not going to be able to explain everything in
Mhm.
the amount of time that we have for this video. So having the questions in the comments below really help. So
Yeah, great. Thank you, Steve. Absolutely. So that's that piece. So the point is, so I think I've covered everything about why it's logical to let go of guilt. Why there's no guilt is not helpful in any way. And if
mhm.
anything, it can do damage. So using that example of the crime, so somebody killed someone. If they spend the rest of their life just feeling guilty, that can hold them back from moving forward to help someone, to actually contribute in some way, to even if it's to other people. Oh, it wasn't the second one. I missed something out. The first one is that thing. The first one is, what can I do to contribute, to make up for, to help in some way? Is there something I can do? And if so, of course, do that. The second thing is a very important piece. It's, what will I do next time? It's, you can't go back in time and change what you did. So the effective, productive, logical thing to do is to go, okay, how can I make sure that I don't make the same mistake next time? So, what can I do moving forward that will help me to make different choices, a more, healthier, more productive, more compassionate choice? And that brings, and then the third one is the unconditional love. And that brings me to when we change the childhood references. So, you were saying about how we learn to feel guilty. So we might as well move on to that part. Guilt is not about now. Guilt is not about, I feel guilty because I, cheated in a relationship, or I stole something, or I, let someone down. It's not about now. We learn to feel guilty from childhood. And so, and for different people, it'll start, the original thing will have been established at different ages and different ways. But the underlying thing is that we are taught to feel guilty. And one of the big pieces of this puzzle is that guilt is a very easy and effective way for parents to control their children.
Yeah.
So, depending on the child, depending on what other references are there, it's a really easy automatic go to try and make a child listen to you. And most parents don't realize just how damaging it can be, that the long-term effects of it. So, but we also don't need to be taught directly how to feel guilty. We've worked with clients and that who've had guilt that came from not being told directly that it's your fault, but by assuming things are your fault. So parents arguing, even if it's got
Hmm.
nothing to do with the child, or getting a divorce or whatever, the child automatically takes on that
Assumes that. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
And then that becomes a foundational guilt. So people think, oh, the child feels guilty and then that's over. But we don't. We bring it with us into adulthood. So this is why this became such a long. We spoke about this topic for 3 hours yesterday, and this is why it's such an
Hmm.
important topic,
Hmm.
is because it's not. It's so subversive. It's under the surface, and it's there all the time, affecting everything. So, with one of the places that you can look in your childhood, it may be really obvious where the guilt originated for you, but one of the places you can look is when I did something wrong, what happened? How was I punished? What did my parent? What were their reactions? And of course, it's going to be different for different people. A lot of people think that the silent treatment is not as bad as being punished. And it definitely is as bad in a different way. It's just, it affects children in a different way. The silent treatment, the effect it has on the child's brain is, I'm going to die. And the reason for that is because we are instinctively, these adults are supposed to keep us alive. And if they don't like us, or they're cross with us for some reason, or they don't know we're there, we will die because they won't protect us. They won't feed us. They won't protect us from wild animals. This is this kind of unconscious instinct going on. So therefore, it has huge damage to be ignored, to be not seen, not heard. Unconsciously, the brain behaves as if we're going to die. So there's that kind of thing. And what you want to aim for is, and we go into how to find and change memories in our other work, but the end, for those of you who do already change memories, what you're aiming for is that when you did something wrong, your parents sat you down, explained what it was, explained, now, this is what you did, and what I needed you to do, or what would have been better would be this, or, so explained it. And then, very crucially, and anyone with children, this would be a great way to work with your children, is to problem solve with the child as opposed to punishing or being angry. So in other words, saying, and this is what we should all do with ourselves as well, is, okay, so now what can we put in place for next time? Moving forward, how can we make sure that you'll remember, or here's an idea for a different, different decision, depending on what the thing is, just because when parents are problem solving with their child, the child's brain is automatically starting to develop the structure for problem solving instead of guilt, shame, and all of the other things. So
Hmm.
it's all about problem solving and strategy. Number one, the parent doing that with the child, and then the child will automatically learn to handle problems in that way, which is obviously much healthier and more effective. You're trying
Hmm.
to say something.
Yeah, and I was
Sorry.
just going to throw it. No, I was just going to add to that, that it's also about building a different emotional state inside.
Mm-hmm.
That uh, when we experience the feeling of being punished, that feeling of uh, the being taught to feel that sense of guilt, it's creating a different feeling inside. It's creating a different foundation for the self identity and the self
Mm-hmm.
image that we are putting together as small children. So that emotional state that our unconscious brain and body is experiencing in childhood, we need to see that as the foundational level of our
Mm-hmm.
self identity.
Yeah.
So I know for myself, and we spend a lot of time kind of uh, on what's the word I'm looking, deconstructing. That was what deconstructing,
Unpacking.
unpacking, deconstructing my journey with guilt, but
Yeah.
recognizing that that happened at such an early age, such an early time in my life. And, it wasn't so much that I I did something wrong as much as I was something wrong. That
Yes.
little brain
Yes.
in me, I'm not going to go into the story right now, but at a very early age, learning that there was something fundamentally wrong with me that I couldn't talk to
Mhm.
anybody else about. Um,
Right.
so just that built a whole level of self-identity, and that feeling of guilt was just woven into the fabric. It was like trying to explain to a fish that they're living in water. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, this is just the condition of my life. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding, I think the point that I'm trying to make with this, and I know it's a lot of words, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it's the feeling state that guilt is creating that we unconsciously we make a link to that feeling. And that's how it becomes toxic. That's how it
Mm-hmm.
becomes something that's a problem in our life, because unconsciously our brain says this is just the way that we move forward in life. So
Mm-hmm.
then we are unconsciously creating situations or attracted to situations in our life that will perpetuate the feeling
Yeah.
of guilt. I,
Yes.
in a situation, and I've done this, you've experienced me doing this kind of thing where something will go wrong and I will immediately take
Yes.
blame for it. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure that's my fault. And I'm sure
Yeah.
that a lot of other people can identify with that.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
don't think that that's a not a common thing, but that's what I'm talking about. And for me, if there is a toxic guilt, that's what is toxic about it, in that it's pernicious. It is there. And the important bit is to understand that it's this feeling state that we're trying to change, or that we do have the ability to change,
Mm-hmm.
and why we would want to engage in changing childhood memories. So it's not about just changing data, it's about changing that what we're holding as a feeling state from childhood. Thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I second everything you said. And because the feeling is not just about the feeling. The feeling is affecting how we think and the
Hmm.
choices we make and how
Hmm.
our perception of everything.
Yeah.
So the feelings are part of the lenses through which we're seeing the world. So it'll affect literally the people we're attracted to. and
Hmm.
the jobs we decide we want to, accept, and the financial decisions we make, and health decisions we make. I mean, it literally affects everything. And so, therefore, because of course, as we're feeling guilt in the same way, any negative emotion, the it's not about how we're feeling, it's the fact that it takes prefrontal cortex offline, so blood drains from the cognitive thinking part of our brain, so we can't think straight as well. And if you think about it, with if we didn't have that guilt, what could we achieve? What would we have achieved by now, with if we weren't being held back by this impossible debt that
Hmm.
we're never going to pay?
Hmm.
So we're busy putting energy, and so that's the other thing is we talk a lot about the actual neuroscience of all of this, so the physiological state, and the effects of childhood memories and chemicals, brain chemistry, and all of that. But also, in addition to all of that, for those who are aware of energetic states and vibrations, those kinds of things, that big time, guilt is going to be attracting punishment. So, so I think that, let us know in the comments your thoughts on this as well, whether you feel that there's any reason to keep the guilt. So, I want to go on to the unconditional love piece of this as well. And the childhood memories, so finding and changing the childhood memories and the unconditional piece go together. They're both important in order to be successful with letting go of the guilt. So the first thing you can do is the little unconditional love exercise, or the beginner's exercise we did in last week's conversation. So our conversation on unconditional love, if you haven't seen that, you can find that in our on our YouTube channel. Um, so practicing that state, or that exercise, to develop the ability to um, to live in a state of unconditional love as much as possible, and to access it is the word I'm looking for, to access it when as needed as well. There's also the book You Have a Superpower, which I'll put a link to in the description of this video as well. That'll take you through the full process of developing that ability. And then getting into that state first, and then finding those childhood memories. And one of the ways you can, if you need help with this, Steve and I both work with clients and that kind of thing. We can help you find specifics. So we'll put a link in this video, or contact us through our website or whatever. But you can ask these questions. How do I know that I have done something wrong, or that there's reason for this guilt? So let's say you let someone down or something. How do I know that this is a problem? And then how does that feel? And then where in my childhood did I feel the same feeling? Now, it may not be to do with guilt, it may be something else, but looking for, you might as well start actually with the guilt. I'm just thinking, with this topic, you might as well start with, what's my earliest memory of knowing I did something wrong? How did I learn about the fact that there's such a thing as doing something wrong? It may not be your own experience. You may have witnessed others, so it may be between your parents or siblings or in school. So there's all kinds of, now, very important piece of this is it may feel overwhelming. A lot of people can't remember much from their childhood, or they don't know what it could be. That's one thing, and we have ways of accessing that information. But for others, it's too much. It's like, well, I can't change all of that. There's just too much. And it's important to recognize that going with the earliest one first, and your brain will update the rest. It's not that you have to change absolutely everything that ever happened to you. The unconscious part of the brain does automatically updates things. And when you can't, if it can't update something, you'll suddenly remember something. It'll come to you. So I don't want people to be put off because it seems like such a big job or so overwhelming. It's we own we only consciously do a small fraction of it, and the unconscious part of the brain does the rest. So we don't have to manually change everything. So, um, and what you're aiming for is to fill your childhood with unconditional love. So, from the adult you now, that your childhood is full of unconditional love from you to your childhood, and then also in your childhood from your parents. So, if you have questions about the childhood memory stuff, changing childhood memories, and that, let me know. I'll answer questions in the comments as well. But the imagine if you'd grown up knowing for a fact that you were loved unconditionally. There was nothing you could do that would mean you wouldn't be loved and accepted. Imagine what you'd be able to achieve and what your life would be like now. So I think that's all I have for now, Steve. I don't
Yeah,
know what the time is, but
yeah, and I feel like the that understanding, or just kind of putting um the all of the childhood changing childhood memories, and that thought of changing parents and trying to imagine parents loving you unconditionally, that can feel like a pretty big leap,
hmm
so um it's obviously not something that we're going to be able to go into in
yeah.
this video, but maybe just a couple of words around um, knowing that what we're not changing the actual person. We know that
hmm
we can never go back and change what actually happened, and
hmm
that can you say something just briefly about that process and
Yeah.
that initial resistance to, for people that had really terrible childhoods, that can
hmm
be
Yeah.
that can seem like a pretty big um
Absolutely.
yeah,
Please do watch our other videos for more information on all of that. And we
absolutely.
also have, I'll put a link in the description of this as well, that goes to the science behind finding and changing childhood memories, to change your life now. So it is based on neuroscience. So this is not something we're just kind of making up. Um, but very briefly, it's the difference between the conscious mind and the unconscious part of the brain. So the part of the brain that is constantly referring to our original childhood memories, the implicit childhood memories that prove who we are and how the world works, we change the implicit childhood memories for that part of the brain only, not for the conscious mind. So you consciously still know exactly what happened. And this is not about right or wrong or gaslighting yourself or anything like that. It's like changing a GPS. So the childhood memories are like your brain's GPS, and your brain is constantly trying to keep you in alignment with whatever happened in your childhood, whatever you experienced in your childhood. So you change that for the unconscious part of the brain so that your brain is then affecting your decisions and how you feel and what seems like a good idea, your judgment, or who you're attracted to, all of that. It's keeping you in alignment with the new childhood memories, the healthy, empowering, safe childhood memories, which so it's that then changes everything you experience moving forward, while you still consciously know what originally happened. So you're not going to suddenly forget everything. It's literally just for the unconscious part of your brain, just like you change the GPS to get you where you want to go, your next destination, while you as the driver still know what originally happened, or where you originally where you were before. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. And just, just a bit of an understanding that there's more here than just than than meets the eye. And I think just a little bit of encouragement and explanation in terms of for people that may be finding this information for the first time. So yeah,
Absolutely.
please again, questions, comments, please interact in the comment section below. We'd love that. And we're going to sign off for now. And hopefully we'll see you again